Hello chums, and welcome to Taming a Monster, the series where I take some of Gran Turismo 7's most ridiculous cars to see if I can tweak them so that a talentless pleb like me can handle them without being killed to death. Like any common ruffian, I'm using a bog standard PlayStation 5 controller, and I have all driver assists turned off, except for ABS. Let's see what car is trying to murder me today. Today we have the 991 generation Porsche 911 GT3 RS, which many players will already know is a horrifying nightmare of a car. So, it makes perfect sense then that we can replace the high-revving naturally aspirated GT3 engine with the nuclear weapon from the Turbo S. This rear-wheel drive beetle now makes over 1000 horsepower. Jolly good. As usual, all upgrades have been fitted, including power upgrades, weight reduction, wide body, and the body rigidity increase. None of the settings have yet been touched, except for downforce, which is maxed, and the transmission, which has already been adjusted for this car. I have fitted aftermarket wheels, which are the standard size, since increasing the size could make this already unstable rocket ship even more twitchy. I have fitted a front splitter for front downforce, a rear diffuser for additional front and rear downforce, and the Type A rear wing to add even more rear downforce. If you're interested in learning more about aero, downforce, or any other aspect of tuning your car, I have a series called Tuning for Beginners which covers everything from suspension to differential to the transmission. The test track today was the Nurburgring GP circuit. Being rear-engined, the 911 has semi-decent traction off the line despite its power. I was expecting this car to behave like a domestic terrorist in this initial test, but I was actually kind of shocked to see it mostly behaving. It was a tad unstable when braking, but it was nothing like as bad as some of the cars previously featured in this series. It was all going rather well until the back straight where the car finally tried to cancel my subscription to life. There it is! So, what happened there was the car suffered from lift-off oversteer at high speed. The car leaning, coupled with the downforce, pushed the wheels into the arches so that I couldn't countersteer. Once the weight transfer evened out and I could steer, it suddenly jolted the car to the left and snapped me in the wrong direction. The short version? The car is too low and too soft and it bottomed out. So, I increased body height, natural frequency, and the anti-roll bar stiffness. Setting the natural frequency and anti-roll bars higher at the rear should help with stability under braking. You may have noticed that the front natural frequency setting is very limited on this car. I'm not sure why, but either way I set the natural frequency higher at the rear, but not as high as I usually would. So the Turbo GT3 took the long sweeper without any real issues this time around. I'm alive! But the car feels like it's always on a knife edge. When you brake, you can feel the back end of the car trying to swing like a pendulum, and unlike less powerful Porsches, its insane power makes it prone to power oversteer as well. Next up, I adjusted the rest of the suspension settings. I increased compression to help the 911 deal with curves. I set compression and expansion slightly higher at the rear since it's supposed to help on rear-heavy cars. Camber was reduced, which generally helps with straight-line traction. Setting it lower at the rear generally improves stability under braking as well. Front toe out was added for the same reason, while rear toe in was added to reduce power oversteer. While the car felt improved, it was still prone to instability here and there. Another unique downside of the weight balance on a car like this is that in some situations the car can actually feel understeery, because there's so little weight pushing the front tyres into the ground. So there's this weird dual personality where the front end will sometimes dart all over the place, and at other times it pushes wide. For my final changes, I adjusted the LSD, reducing initial torque and braking sensitivity to help with overall agility. I also reduced acceleration sensitivity, which reduces power oversteer. And finally, I added some ballast weight to the front axle, so that there was something pushing those front wheels into the ground. There's a small group of people, in Gran Turismo tuning circles, who spout the idea that adding ballast will always make a car slower or worse. That's bollocks. There's so many situations where ballast can not only make your car nicer to drive and more consistent, but also make your car objectively faster. Whether it be adding weight to the back of a muscle car so it reduces wheel spin, or adding weight to the front of an unruly Porsche. It can be one of the most transformative things you can possibly do, and despite only adding 36 kilograms, this car is no exception. It's much easier to drive, and I felt that it was ready to take on the Nurburgring. In my initial test, I did have a few slight issues. So I made a few more tweaks to the setup, primarily adding 10 more kilograms of ballast to the front axle, and I made a few small changes to try and improve stability under braking. While those changes helped, this car is still what you would consider temperamental. The ballast weight over the front axle certainly hasn't killed the 911's overall driving characteristics, and it still has a very obvious tendency to oversteer when you brake or lift off throttle, so it very much pays to brake in a straight line. If you still find this car too unstable, I certainly wouldn't blame you, but you can simply add some more ballast weight to the front axle until it calms down to your liking. As it is though, this car strikes a good balance. It's just about unstable enough to be fun to drive, and convince you that you are driving a rear-engined Porsche. However, it's stable enough to just about manage, even on a track like the Nordschleife. While the current setup still feels quite edgy here, on flatter, smoother tracks it is much friendlier. As engine swaps go, this may actually be one of my favourites. I'm personally not a fan of Porsche in general, but giving us the option to put the Turbo S engine into the GT3 is great, because we can effectively recreate the GT2. It's also not stupidly excessive. Giving this car the turbo engine boosts total power potential by about 300 horsepower, which does sound excessive until you consider that the Beetle gets 5 times the power with the Porsche 911 engine, and the Nissan S13 Qs gets a 900 horsepower boost. Plus, this car does have the downforce to manage that power. Its main downfall has nothing to do with the amount of power you push out of it. It'll have the same instability with 200 horsepower, let alone 1000. I took it fairly steady for my first full lap, managing a 6 minutes 6 seconds, which I felt could be improved upon. This lap, as you can hopefully tell, was slightly more on the car's limit, and I managed a 5 minute 58, making this the second fastest monster behind the 1400 horsepower Cayman. So that was my attempt to tame a monster. I hope my settings helped, or that you enjoyed this video. Join me next time where I'll probably be driving something slower. Thank you very much for watching, and if you're feeling particularly generous, I'd greatly appreciate your subscription. Take care now, and ta-ra.